Another new Cup Series team announces their 2021 plans. NASCAR and the teams are already planning 2021 contingencies. And just how involved is NASCAR in the buying and selling of charters? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. It's the start of a new week. Things are getting festive here at Out of the Groove. Yes, I did put a Christmas tree up before Thanksgiving this year. I'm not proud of it, but with the way 2020 has gone, I figured we could all start celebrating a little early. We're catching up mostly on some news I missed last week. It's been a busy first couple weeks of the off season. If you missed it this weekend, I interviewed Sam Mayer, RK East Series champion, and yesterday I looked back at all of the 2020 Cup Series teams and I listed out my 10 favorite from the year. Got quite the conversation started, so go check that video out if you missed it. But we're going to start today's episode by talking about one of the newest NASCAR Cup Series teams that announced their plans just at the start of this past weekend. Friday morning, BJ McLeod and Matt Tifft announced the name and some details about their brand new Cup Series team, Live Fast Motorsports. Get a load of this concept art. We'll talk some details in a second, but you can see it's a Ford Mustang. The number 78 is back. There you go. I love the design. I don't know if this will ever be a real paint scheme on the track, but I like it. It's got a style to it. This was the statement that the newly formed Live Fast Motorsports put out this past weekend. Matt Tifft and BJ McLeod are thrilled to announce the formation of Live Fast Motorsports. The number 78 Ford Mustang will compete on a full-time basis in the 2021 season and beyond. BJ McLeod will pilot the number 78 Mustang under the charter that Tifft and McLeod obtained in 2020 alongside Joe Falk. Live Fast Motorsports has entered a strategic partnership with Stewart-Haas Racing to assist the team in competition and navigating the difficulties of developing a successful NASCAR Cup team. A couple things to react to there. Firstly, we had Matt Tifft on the show a few weeks back and he talked about this new team a little bit and he made it clear to me that they intend on this team being competitive a couple of years down the line. They aren't planning to be like a Spire or something. I feel like that's become like a dirty word. I don't mean to use them as like a curse word or anything, but either they don't plan on being one of those teams that just rides around 35th and collects the charter money. No, Matt Tifft wanted to make it clear to me a few weeks ago that their intent is to be competitive. Probably not next year. First year of any new team is going to be difficult, especially with all the extenuating circumstances going on. But a few years down the line, especially with the next gen car, they hope to be extremely competitive. So there's a few things to react to there. Firstly, they announced that their driver will in fact be BJ McLeod, 36 years old. He's a Cup Series, Xfinity Truck Series veteran. He's raced in a lot of races. He's never been in even okay equipment. Well, at least not on the Cup Series side of things. Now, people I've talked to who've raced with him or worked with BJ McLeod, have been around BJ McLeod in any significant capacity, say he's great to work with. I've heard nothing bad about BJ McLeod. Matt Tifft, of course, is a former driver as well, but he also reiterated Friday that he's not planning to get in the car any soon, but he isn't ruling out the possibility of driving again one day. Of course, for him, it's more health concerns. That's what took him out of the car at the end of the 2019 season, was seizures and other health problems related to that. So BJ McLeod will be the driver next year. That is worth noting. The other thing worth noting is that the team is forming a strategic partnership with Stewart-Haas, a powerhouse organization. Now, those words could have a lot of different meanings. I don't expect this new Live Fast Motorsports 78 car to show up and run top 10 next year with all the other SHR cars. I don't think that's going to happen. Keep in mind that 2021 is a weird gap year between the current Gen 6 and the next gen car debuting in 2022. To me, if I had to guess, this is going to be closer to like what Go Fast Racing had with Stewart-Haas this year, where Go Fast was getting some much older SHR chassis, and you saw this year Go Fast ran a little bit better than usual a few times this year. They had some top 15, top 20 runs with Corey LaJoie, but most of the time they ran 25th and had a lot of mechanical issues still. So I don't anticipate Live Fast Motorsports being a playoff contender. Might be a little faster than at least things BJ McLeod has run in his career, but I'll be curious to know if this partnership, they don't really use the word alliance or technical alliance, so I'm not entirely sure the depth that this actually goes, but I'll be curious to see if it lasts beyond 2021. With the new car, presumably Live Fast Motorsports is not going to need chassis from Stewart-Haas or anything like that. Everyone's going to be getting their own. They're all going to be brand new. So I'll be curious to see if this partnership grows into something further after 2021. But there you have it. This is likely going to be the best car BJ McLeod has driven in his Cup Series career. It still may only be like a 27th or 28th place car most weeks, but hey, that's a step up. I mean, I'm excited. BJ McLeod's 36 years old. Matt Tifft is 24 years old. Those are very young people to be now owning a new Cup Series team, but that's also exciting. I've said before that eventually NASCAR is going to need to get some younger team owners. This is no disrespect whatsoever to Roger Penske or Joe Gibbs or Jack Roush or anyone like that, but the truth is they're getting older, and in some cases they don't handle the day-to-day operations of the team as much as they used to already. But eventually we're going to need some newer, younger owners to start to rise through the ranks, and that's why I'm excited about Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan are both relatively young. Obviously Matt Tifft and BJ McLeod are extremely young. Justin Marks with Trackhouse, I don't even think he's 40 years old yet. I mean, another very young and promising up-and-coming team owner. owner. I hope all these new teams pan out and are around for many years to come. Chances are at least some of them won't, but I'm hoping for the best because more young, exciting team owners and more competitive new teams is good for NASCAR. So excited to see what happens with Matt Tifft and BJ McLeod's new Live Fast Motorsports. Very curious to see what they can do next year. Now, as it was said in their statement, this charter that they've gotten for the 78 car is actually the part of Go Fast's charter that they sold this offseason. Remember, Go Fast Racing is going to just run a few races next year and then is ultimately going to shut down likely after 2021. So in partnership with Joe Falk, as was mentioned, they are using the Go Fast Racing charter to field this full-time entry next year. Now, a lot of questions this offseason have been raised about the charter system. I shouldn't say it's exclusive to this offseason. The charter system has been in question ever since it was implemented. There's some pros to it, there's some cons to it. It's a lot to try and get into, but with this year being so weird and so many teams kind of coming and going, so many new teams this year, so many old teams leaving, the charter system has come up in many instances. Now, this didn't really fit with any of my videos I did last week, but about a week ago, Carl Long was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio. I saw these reports on Twitter about what he was saying during that radio appearance, and he reportedly raised some concerning points that had a few people talking earlier in the week. Last week, Carl Long said NASCAR is eliminating the money allocated to open teams for 2021. He says it was usually about $20,000 a race per team. The open teams are, of course, teams that do not own a charter. There are 36 charters, so therefore each weekend there are 36 teams in the Cup race that are chartered teams. But as we've seen the last few years, there's always at least 2, 3, or 4 other cars entered in the race to fill out the 40-car field. Usually those are not chartered teams. So this would affect those 3 or 4 teams at the back there that don't own charters, that are just trying to qualify every week and make what money they can. This is concerning, obviously, and this would hurt those 3 or 4 teams' abilities to stay in business and to compete. It definitely appears as though NASCAR is putting all of their emphasis, all of their focus, all of their attention, all of their resources into the 36 chartered race teams. And it's clear NASCAR doesn't care as much about the several teams that just show up each week without a charter. I say that because reportedly all that money that NASCAR is taking away from the non-chartered teams next year is still going to be spent. Bob Pockrass reported last week that the $20,000 per race per open team will go into the overall race purse. And based on this, Bob Pockrass estimates that open teams will likely only get roughly $2,000 per race on average, as opposed to close to $20,000. So that's a huge knock. But it's not like that money is just going away entirely. When I first heard what Carl Long said or read what he had to say, I was thinking, oh, is this like budget cuts? Is this because of the pandemic? NASCAR doesn't have as much money. They need to focus all their attention on the charter teams. Like, is that what this is? No, it sounds like a strategic effort from NASCAR to just put the emphasis on the 36 charter teams. And this is where I think people disagree with me, because I can kind of see both sides to this. Obviously, you want as many people to have the chance to race and compete in NASCAR as is possible. You don't want to close NASCAR off to only the 36 teams that are able to shell out millions for a charter. You'd like NASCAR to be still open to the average Joe who maybe can scrounge up some resources, build a car in his garage like it's 1980, show up to Darlington, qualify for the big show. Those stories are great. Those are awesome. And you want those teams to stay in business because those teams are jobs. Those are people's livelihoods. You don't want to see NASCAR race teams go away if you can avoid it. But at the same time, let's just be honest. Do any of the non-charter teams ever contend? Like, watching the race at home, if you're a fan watching the race at home, are fans gonna even notice these teams are gone? I obviously don't mean any disrespect, I'm just being realistic. The 36 charter teams are the 36 best and most competitive race cars consistently. I mean, obviously there's a few teams there that never contend for wins either, but my point is the non-charter teams are certainly not contending for race wins with any regularity. They're not contending for top 10s or top 20s with any sort of consistency either. So my point is, are fans watching at home who buy the merchandise, who spend tickets to go to the race, are any of those fans really going to notice that a couple non-charter teams are gone? I'm thinking about this from NASCAR's perspective. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. Of course, like I said, I want more teams to have the opportunity to get into NASCAR and to grow and compete. But if I'm thinking about this from NASCAR's business perspective, they want the value of charters to be as high as they possibly can. They want the big teams that have spent all the money to buy charters to feel like they made a valuable and valid purchase. So if that means taking a little bit of money away from non-charter teams and shelling it out to the charter teams to add value to the charter, I mean, it might make the most sense from a business perspective for NASCAR to do such a thing, because again, fans, for the most part, are not going to notice. And let's just be honest, NASCAR knows which teams are most important to NASCAR's overall health. If Hendrick is running well, if Gibbs is running well, if they're all happy and everything, NASCAR's doing okay as well, most likely. Anyway, that was not the only concerning or interesting thing Carl Long said last week. He also said this is a report, I saw this tweet from Talking in Circles on Twitter. Long also explained he offered more money to Germain Racing for their charter, but was told no thank you. He had a sponsor that was willing to write a check for the cost of the charter, but NASCAR and Germain wanted to go in a different direction. This did not raise as many eyebrows as I think it should, maybe just because everyone in the garage area knows this happens behind the scenes, and because the show's called Out of the Groove, I am very literally out of the groove and out of the loop in this case. But I didn't see many people talking about this, so how involved is NASCAR in the buying and selling of charters? Like, is NASCAR actually able to approve or veto the sale of charters like how the NBA commissioner is able to veto trades? That seems shady. I mean, the race team, Germain in this case, bought the charter, right? They spent their money to buy a multi-million-dollar charter. Shouldn't they then be allowed to sell that charter to the highest bidder, no matter who it is? The reason I question this is because the team that eventually did buy Germain Racing's charter was 23XI Racing, the Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin juggernaut that's gotten tons of media attention. They're the ones who ultimately bought the Germain Racing charter, even though Carl Long is alleging that he actually offered more money. NASCAR said, no, Germain, you have to sell to Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. That just seems, I mean, let me put it this way. NASCAR is allowed to have power. NASCAR is ultimately a private company who should get to dictate in many ways how their series goes. But this does concern me because it sounds like there's a lack of transparency that, I don't know, if I'm in the sport and I'm trying to play by the rules, I'm trying to use the system the way it's intended to further my career or start a race team or do whatever I may want to do, if there's no transparency there, I feel like that's a lot harder to do. So that's the only thing I'm asking for in this case. Did NASCAR ultimately force Germain Racing to sell to Michael Jordan? I think they might have. That's what Carl Long is alleging. Hey, again, I get it. From a business standpoint, would you rather have Carl Long fielding a 30th place team next year, or would you rather have Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin funded by Toyota Racing Development with Bubba Wallace as their driver fielding a championship or playoff contender next year? The choice is obvious. You want the playoff or championship contender. So I don't blame NASCAR for maybe making an executive decision. I just hope they ate some of the cost and paid Germain Racing what they were losing out by not selling to Carl Long. That's all I hope, is that NASCAR went into their own pockets so that Germain Racing wasn't stuck selling to a lower bidder, because that wouldn't seem fair. Anyway, a lot of complicated things going on with the charter system. It's perhaps more trouble than it's worth. I don't know. We'll get into the charter system one day. Who knows? I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Let me put it that way. We've caught up on a lot of last week's news now. The last thing I want to talk about in today's episode is a tweet I saw from Adam Stern, Sports Business Journal. He says, NASCAR met with top team executives last week to start hashing out what infield access will look like in 2021. Among other things, NASCAR is considering creating different types of hospitality experiences for sponsors that don't involve going into the infield. This is an important topic for a couple different reasons. Obviously, 2021, while it may seem like it's right around the corner, the Daytona 500 is still almost 3 months away. A lot can change in the world in 3 months. So I'm not going to get into the business of trying to predict, when the pandemic may end, when the vaccine will be widely available. I'm not going to try and get into the business of protecting. I mean, I read the news, I see the speculation for myself, but I'm not going to try and add my voice to that in any way, shape, or form. I'm here to talk NASCAR. The reason this is important, though, is for a number of reasons. Firstly, and simply, fans. I want fans to have as much access to the sport as they possibly can, as soon as they possibly can. So hopefully fans are able to have infield access, media is able to have infield access, drivers' families are able to go to the track again. I want the at-track experience to once again become as big and as extravagant as it always has been. I want to see camping return on the infields consistently at every track. So I want all that, of course, but the other big thing I'm concerned about, or that I would like to have answered, is what Adam Stern is talking about right there. Is what about sponsors? Because I know specifically, in some cases from firsthand experience, what smaller teams, even in Cup Series, but especially like in Xfinity or in trucks, how difficult it is for them to sell sponsorship for races if the sponsor can't go to the track. I know there are some sponsors that will sponsor an Xfinity team or a truck team for a weekend just so they can take some of their employees, some of their friends, go to the racetrack, get the VIP treatment, see it all firsthand. For some sponsors, that's really how they treat that. And that's how some smaller teams or teams in some of these series make money on sponsors in some cases. And that's why I think it's extremely important that NASCAR and the teams figure out some way to allow sponsors a special amount of access as soon as they can next year. There's a very good chance that things won't be back to normal at the start of the season and that we're going to begin 2021 similarly to how we ended 2020. I believe it's extremely important NASCAR finds a way to get sponsors into the track, at the track somehow in some special way, because that's important income for a lot of teams. And in all three series, Cup, Xfinity, and trucks, there's teams that need that type of stuff to sell sponsorship. I'm encouraged to hear this report from Adam Stern. Sounds like they're talking about it months in advance, which is very good. I just don't know what options they're going to have. If you really can't go into the infield, that's where the action happens. That's where pit road is. That's where the garage is. That's where all the cars are. That's where the celebrities are usually. I mean, a lot of the action happens in the infield. So I'm not sure what NASCAR or the teams or the tracks are going to be able to come up with that's equivalent to the infield experience, but hopefully they're able to come up with something, and hopefully teams are able to sell sponsorship as soon into the year as is possible. That's really all I wanted to say there. I just wanted to highlight that story and talk about how important that story should be. I think that should be concerning to a lot of people and interesting to a lot of people, but that's all I have to talk about in today's episode. Thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. We talk NASCAR almost every single day, even throughout the off season. Of course, a huge thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. I could not do this show without your fantastic support. More to come this week with Thanksgiving, of course, in just a few days. There might not be quite as many videos this week as per usual. Now that I've said that, there's gonna be like a million news stories. I'm gonna have like 8 days straight of uploads probably, but with Thanksgiving, there might be a couple days off later this week, but we'll be catching you up on all major NASCAR stories as soon as they happen. Thank you all for the support. I will see you again very, very soon.